7 bone-chilling last words spoken before death. A hospice nurse reveals the shocking truth. At the heart of a dimly lit hospice, shadows danced along the walls, whispering secrets of souls at the edge of eternity. Ellen, a seasoned hospice nurse, had witnessed it all. Every sigh, every groan, every last breath was a note in a haunting symphony of farewells. But one fateful night, a patient's final words floated through the air, chilling her to the bone. "They're coming for me." They breathed, eyes wide with fear. It was not just the words that gripped her, it was the way they spoke, like a man haunted by unseen phantoms. The room was heavy with an unsettling energy, thick enough to choke on. Ellen glanced at the other patients. One man, bedridden and pale, suddenly jerked his head up, terror etched across his features. "Do you hear that?" he gasped, his voice trembling as he clutched the sheets, knuckles white. She sensed it too, a presence swirling around them, not visible but palpable, resonant with dread. Each tick of the clock echoed ominously, turning the ordinary into extraordinary. Others in the ward began murmuring, questioning whether they too could feel this odd tension, as if the darkness was alive, pulsating with malevolent intent. As the hours dragged on, bizarre incidents multiplied. A window swung open with a creak, letting in the shrill wind, and a soft voice hissed, "Help me," from the darkness. Panic gripped Ellen's chest. It was the voice of another patient, yet he lay motionless, his eyes closed as if in a deep sleep. How was that possible? She shook her head, trying to dispel the unsettled feeling crawling up her spine. But the more she tried, the tighter her throat became, and the reality felt even more twisted. Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Just then, a familiar nurse rushed by, her face pale and shaken. "Did you hear what happened in room 7? She blurted, eyes wide with terror. Ellen's heart raced. Room 7. That S where the first ominous whisper had originated. What had they seen? What had they heard? Suddenly, a haunting familiarity washed over Ellen. Something felt dreadfully wrong in the air. She glanced back at the clock. It was almost midnight, the witching hour. She could feel prying eyes watching her. Were there ghosts among them? Or were these the ramblings of dying minds playing tricks? With every ounce of courage, she forced herself to step towards room 7, the hallway stretching before her like an ominous chasm waiting to swallow her whole. An icy chill rushed past her, and as she turned the handle, what darkness lay waiting just beyond the door. What sinister truth awaited her? The door creaked open, revealing a room shrouded in shadows. Weak light from the flickering overhead bulb danced atop the sterile sheets, where a single figure lay still. It was Mrs. Henderson, an elderly lady whom Ellen had cared for over the months. Once vibrant, now just a whisper of her former self, her frail body barely stirred as Ellen stepped inside, but something was not right. The air felt thicker here, heavy with an otherworldly presence. Ellen's heart raced as she noticed a chill that rushed around her ankles like a serpent, daring her to step further inside. "Mrs. Henderson?" She called softly, hoping to break the spell of unease that was creeping along her skin. The old woman's eyes fluttered open, clouded yet penetrating. "They're here," she rasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've come for me." Fear washed over Ellen like a wave. Who were they? The words echoed in her mind, making her stomach twist. Before Ellen could speak, a sudden flash of movement caught her eye. The curtains fluttered, then settled, as if someone had just passed through them. She turned sharply but saw only the darkened corner of the room. Her pulse quickened. She felt as if she were not just alone, but being watched, scrutinized by something unseen. "Ellen, help me." Mrs. Henderson's voice trembled, pulling her attention back. They don't belong here, I can see them. The old woman's gaze shifted to the corner. Ellen followed her eyes, her mouth dry, heart pounding. What was there? The shadows seemed to sway and pulse, as if alive, inching ever closer. Who, Mrs. Henderson? Ellen found herself asking, compelled to seek answers. The answer curled around her, a silence that swallowed every heartbeat. Fear made her fingertips tingle. Darkness, she whispered, and before Ellen could ask more, Mrs. Henderson convulsed. Ellen rushed to her side, gripping the frail woman's hand. Stay with me. Just breathe. But the grip was loosening, the breaths turning ragged. Just then, the overhead bulb flickered violently, casting a strobing light that made it feel like the room was breathing. Shadows danced crazily upon the walls, jagged and cruel. Ellen stumbled back, her heart hammering out a frantic rhythm in her chest. In the flickering light, Ellen caught a glimpse of something pale. Figures hovered just outside her vision, obscured by darkness, yet undeniably there. A chill ran down her spine. What do you want? She shouted, trying to project courage over her terror. An icy hand brushed against her neck. She turned, but there was nothing there, only the relentless rhythm of despair in the air. A voice whispered close to her ear, scraping at her sanity. You cannot push us away. Ellen's breath hitched. She was trapped in a cycle of horror. Between the living and the dead, caught in a web she never wanted to weave. She looked back at her patient, heartbreaking as Mrs. Henderson's eyes rolled back, a soft help me escaping her lips in a final breath. Suddenly, the weight of the room pressed down harder. As Ellen gasped for air, she felt a pull towards the door. She stumbled back, nearly falling, just as an uneasy realization hit her: she had to leave. Leaving meant accepting what she had witnessed. Leaving meant she might never know what truly happened here, but could she really escape the darkness that had enveloped her? Ellen glanced back one last time at the dying woman, eyes wide in horror, then turned, fleeing into the hallway. As she ran, she could hear the whispers chasing her, echoing in her mind. Ellen, they called softly, as if the shadows were beckoning her back. What awaited her when she reached the nursing station? Would the chilling fate of Mrs. Henderson linger with her, or would she uncover the twisted truths that hid in the shadows of room 7? Fear locked her throat as she hurried forth, knowing one thing was certain: she had only just begun to scratch the surface of the haunting mysteries ahead. Ellen bolted down the hallway, her footsteps echoing against the sterile tiles. Each stride felt like a battle against the shadows that loomed around her, fluttering just beyond her vision. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of indecipherable words mixed with low moans, wrapping around her like a suffocating fog. Help me, the phrase lingered, accusingly, hanging in the air as if Mrs. Henderson's voice had become a curse chasing her down. As Ellen reached the nursing station, she felt a wave of desperation crash over her. The staff were there, oblivious to her turmoil, chatting lightly about charts and medications. How could they seem so normal? Didn't they feel the energy in the air? Didn't they hear the voices? Ellen, you okay? Karen, one of the nurses, looked up with concern. Ellen's chest tightened, a lump rising in her throat. She swallowed hard, battling the swirling emotions threatening to spill over. It's Mrs. Henderson, she managed, her voice trembling. She needs help. Something's wrong. Karen frowned, glancing at the clock. She's always had her tough days. Let me check on her. Ellen's heart sank. If only they knew the truth. If only they could understand what she felt in that room, the unshakable presence that clung to the air. Wait. Ellen grasped Karen's arm, her eyes wide with urgency. You can't go back there alone, please. I think something's off. A shadow flickered across Karen's face. Ellen, it's late. You're just tired. Let me go check. With that, Karen turned to head down the hall. Karen! Ellen shouted. But it was too late. Her colleague disappeared around the corner, leaving her frozen in place. The whispers grew louder, a dreadful chorus enticing her to turn back, to follow. A chill raced through Ellen's body, and in that moment, she knew she couldn't leave it alone. She needed answers for Mrs. Henderson, for her own sanity. She took a deep breath and sprinted after Karen, determination replacing her fear. As she slipped back into the shadows of the corridor, she stopped just outside room 7, her heart pounding in her chest. The door was ajar, but no light seeped through, it felt like an abyss, dark and inviting. When she pushed the door open, the scene inside nearly stopped her heart. Karen was standing frozen by the bedside, her face pale and eyes wide, staring at Mrs. Henderson as if she was seeing a ghost. But the real horror lay in the air above the old woman. Darkness swirled, twisting into something almost tangible. Ellen's breath caught. The pale figures that had haunted her earlier now emerged from the shadows, eyes glistening like raindrops catching the sun. No, Ellen gasped, the very word blocking her throat. One of the figures raised a brittle hand toward Mrs. Henderson. Time seemed to stand still, the room held its breath. Get away from her! Ellen yelled, taking a step forward. But as the words left her mouth, the air thickened further. The figures seemed to turn their attention toward her, their hollow gazes consuming her courage. Ellen, the whisper wasn't just in her head this time. It curled around her senses, pulling her deeper into a trick of the mind. They were inviting her in, insisting on her compliance. Run! A voice shattered the stillness, it was Karen. In an instant, she sprinted toward Ellen, arms flailing, her own breath a ragged gasp. They both turned to flee, hearts pounding in synchrony, but just as Ellen bolted from the room, she caught sight of Mrs. Henderson, her eyes wide open but unseeing, mouth agape in terror. What was it trying to tell them? They flew down the corridor, but the shadows stretched and clawed at their heels. Someone needed to stay. Someone had to confront the darkness before it swallowed them whole, but who? The question loomed as they crashed into the bright lights of the nursing station, panting and wild-eyed, just as the overhead bulbs flickered ominously, leaving their reflection trembling in the glass. Now both women stood drenched in fear, knowing they were standing on the edge of something terrible. What price would they pay for the truth? What shadows awaited them next? Ellen's heart raced as she and Karen stood in the glaring lights of the nursing station, the echoes of their panic still reverberating in the air. There was no denying it anymore. Something in that room had reached out, and whatever it was hungry. The fluorescent bulbs hummed ominously, flickering as if the very light sensed the darkness creeping just beyond the walls. Ellen, what did we just see? Karen's voice trembled, her usual confident demeanor unraveling like a frayed string. That was I don't even know what that was. I don't know, Ellen stammered, her thoughts swirling in a chaotic dance. But it wasn't just in our heads. You felt it too, right? The way the air thickened. It wasn't just Mrs. Henderson. It was something more. More. Karen echoed, wide-eyed, glancing back towards room 7 as if expecting a ghostly hand to reach out for them again. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, making her flinch. A few nurses in the corners of the station noticed their distress. Faces turned, eyes narrowed, murmurs began. What is going on with those two? Someone whispered, barely audible over the din of charts and machines. Focus. Ellen snapped suddenly, frustration mixing with fear. We need to go back. What? Are you crazy? Karen shook her head vehemently, her eyes pleading. That thing, those figures, they can't be real. They are. And if we don't confront it, who knows what will happen to Mrs. Henderson? It's not just about her anymore. I can't just stand here. Before Karen could protest further, Ellen turned and bolted back down the hallway. She didn't wait for her colleague. The path before her felt paved with dread, shadows slithering between the walls as she approached room 7 once more. This time, she was ready. The door creaked open. How had it opened? The darkness inside pooled thicker than before, as if it were alive. She stepped inside, her breath caught in her throat, and there stood Karen, hesitant at the doorway. "Ellen!" Karen hissed, her voice trembling as she struggled to step in. "We shouldn't tea Mrs. Henderson," Ellen called, her voice steadying as it broke the silence. "I'm here. Please, talk to me." But Mrs. Henderson lay like a hollow vessel, trapped in stillness, her wide eyes staring into nothingness. Ellen took a step closer, her pulse pounding in her ears. The figures emerged again, swirling, their expressions unrecognizable yet filled with an ancient sorrow that clawed at her heart. "Help me!" It was the old woman's voice, a whisper that shattered the air. Ellen stepped forward, every instinct screaming at her to turn away. But she felt Karen's hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "We can't take this lightly. What if we anger them? Then we'll face them," Ellen replied fiercely, heart racing. "We're nurses, this is our job. To face the darkness." The shadows writhed, forming shapes that pulsed with energy. The murmurs within the darkness rose sharply, tending to swell, then retreating like waves against the shore. "Who are you?" Ellen shouted over the chilling whispers. "What do you want?" The figures paused, as if her words hung in the air. The one closest to Mrs. Henderson pointed, a finger bony and accusing, towards Ellen. Then, a horrible realization broke over her. The dark presence surged, filling the room with bitter cold. Ellen grasped Karen's arm, energy crackling between them. "It can't just be Mrs. Henderson," Ellen said, breathless. "It's all the souls, those who never had peace." "Ellen," Karen warned, urgency lacing her voice. "We have to leave," but before she could finish, a fierce wind swept through the room, whipping at their hair and clothes like a storm unleashed. The figures seemed to close in, shadows darting closer, invading their space which felt overwhelmingly intimate yet strangely suffocating. "Help us!" Mrs. Henderson's voice rose louder, growing more desperate, as if pleading for salvation. The lights above flickered harshly, and Ellen felt the walls vibrate. Now the truth stood before them, wrapped in danger. Would they decide to confront the shadows or flee from their fears? The choice loomed like an irreversible shadow, waiting to consume them whole. What would they uncover next, and at what cost? The room pulsed with energy, the shadows swirling tighter around Ellen and Karen as if drawn by their very fear. The whispering figure closest to Mrs. Henderson shifted, its bony finger still pointing, now pulsating with urgency. The echoes of long-lost cries filled the air, causing Karen to step back, her breath hitching with dread. "We can't stay like this," Karen gasped, her eyes wide as impossibly dark shapes edged closer. "If we do, we might never leave." "No." Ellen stared hard at the figures, her heart pounding with sudden determination. "We need to know why they're here. What do they want us to do?" The whispers turned frantic, swirling around them like a dark tempest. Ellen felt the walls closing in. They throbbed with an unholy life of their own, seeming to resonate with the unsatisfied grief of the trapped souls. She stepped closer to Mrs. Henderson, who was still locked in her silent stare, unaware of the chaos unfolding around her. "Help us," the old woman pleaded again, her voice tremulous, as if anchored in a profound sadness. The moment Ellen heard it again, a chill shot through her. All at once, an unseen force propelled her closer. She braced herself against the feeling, grounding herself in the present, trying to separate the overwhelming dread from intuition. "Have you felt it?" Ellen said suddenly, her voice rising above the maelstrom. "The connections between us? It's as if they're asking for something from us, not just Mrs. Henderson." "Ellen, don't!" Karen's warning was cut off with a gasp, her eyes darting around to the figures whose forms seemed to blur and shift like smoke. "Tell me!" Ellen shouted, desperation rising in her tone. "What do you need?" The air heaviened, the temperature plummeted, and suddenly, a cacophony of voices crashed over them. The anger, sorrow, and longing of 1,000 souls spilled into the room. It roared like a tempest, filling every corner with unearthly cries for release. Ellen's heart raced, blood thundered in her ears, but she pushed through the cold dread engulfing her. A voice, sharp and piercing, cut through the clamor, reaching out to Ellen's soul. "Set us free." The air crackled as if acknowledging the command, swirling around Ellen like a cyclone. An ethereal light flickered around the figures, illuminating their haunted faces, tormented, pleading, twisted in pain. "What if," Ellen began, her voice trembling yet fierce, "what if we can't? What if we are only human?" "No," the voice echoed back, infused with urgency. "You are our only hope. You hold the key." A burst of horrifying realization struck her. "What do you need from me?" she whispered, the weight of her words sinking into the fabric of the room. In that moment, the shadows coalesced into a single form, an outline of a woman, lips trembling as if trying to form the words. Ellen's breath caught as she recognized the resemblance of a past patient who had died languidly, filled with unspoken regrets. Her heart twisted painfully. "You must remember us." A flurry of images invaded Ellen's mind, each soul, a fragment of life, a story left unfinished. Tears stung her eyes, and she stepped back, grappling with the agony of their shared despair. "We're not just nurses," Karen muttered, pulling Ellen back as if sensing her connection deepening. "We're also their voices, their whispers." The room began to shake with intensity, shadows shattering into tendrils reaching out toward them, drawn by recognition and hope. Ellen's heart hammered wildly, the urgency almost unbearable. "In what way can we help?" Ellen pleaded. "Give us." The swirling darkness implored. "Life to be heard." The stakes climbed higher. Would Ellen act on this newfound understanding, risking everything? Or would she retreat, abandoning these souls to their fate? With one gaze locked on the swirling maelstrom of lost lives, she braced herself for the choice ahead. Could she honor them in death, or would she allow the darkness to swallow their stories whole? The answer loomed in the air, a heartbeat away from revelation. Would they be prepared for the consequences that awaited? Ellen's heart thudded painfully as the air reverberated with the soul's cry for liberation. Karen, eyes wide with fear, clutched Ellen's arm tightly, grounding both of them in their shared reality. The room trembled as shadows undulated, moving with an agonizing urgency as if desperate for their voices to be heard. "What do they want us to remember?" Karen whispered, her voice barely audible above the chaotic chorus of wails and screams. Ellen felt a tremor run down her spine. "I don't know, but I think it's something personal." As she spoke, she focused on the flickering shadows, searching for clues. "Maybe it's our own memories we need to confront, the things we've buried deep inside." The forms seemed to beckon closer. An ember of fear ignited within Ellen. What if they were not meant to come back? What if the very act of remembering pulled them deeper into this haunting dimension? Suddenly, the static in the room shifted, and the voices grew quieter. The shadows merged into a towering silhouette, clearer now, a woman with hollow eyes, filled with tears yet unspilled. Ellen's breath caught again, she recognized her. "Margaret?" Ellen called, her voice trembling with emotion. Memories poured back, an old patient, a kind woman with stories that could fill volumes. Why was she here? The figure nodded, her lips quivering, struggling to form coherent words. "You must remember the stories." The darkness around her pulsed, weaving through the essence of longing. "What stories, Margaret?" Ellen pressed, her throat tightening. "What can we share that would finally grant you peace?" The shadows began to swirl excitedly, almost impatiently, flickering with energy that sent a chill racing through her veins. The sense of antiseptic and decay hung thick in the air, reminders of a world beyond the glass doors of the hospice. Margaret lifted a skeletal hand toward Ellen, the wisps of shadow entwining around her delicate fingers. "You have the answers inside you. The things you wanted to say. The things you never could." Ellen's mind erupted in a storm of fragmented memories: her first day as a hospice nurse, the laughter shared over tea, and last goodbyes whispered between heavy sobs. She had listened to the stories of others but had buried her own dreams, her own grief for lost opportunities. Let them out. Ellen barely recognized her own voice as her heartache poured into the room. I remember my grandmother. I never told her, I never told anyone how much I loved her. As those words left her lips, the shadows surged forward, merging like a river of grief breaking free from a dam. The echoes of hundreds of lives began to coalesce, forming a symphony of shared sorrow, each note a reminder of what they had left unspoken. The room surged with power, the energies swirling around them blasting like lightning in a storm. Karen gasped, her eyes wide in realization. We must all share those fears, those hidden loves. That's what they want. To be fully seen. To scream their grief into the world. Ellen's heart felt like it was on fire, urgency pulsing through her veins. But how do we do it? How do we help them pass? Fear not, 100 voices rasped in unison, the shadows flaring like wildflowers seeking the sun, pulling them closer to the center of the chaos, daring them to find the courage buried deep within. With adrenaline surging, Ellen grabbed Karen's hand, the two of them standing at the center of the maelstrom. We can do this. Together. Together, they breathed in the weighted silence, feeling their hearts sink with the souls clamoring for release, determined to share what had always remained unsaid. But as they began to summon their voices, the burdens felt heavier. Could they regain the strength to face their truths? The shadows writhed, ready for the truth to be unleashed, but an ominous shudder sliced through the room. Will we also find peace, or will the burden shatter us? The question hung heavy in the air, a haunting anticipation curling around them like smoke, racing toward the unknown. The air crackled, palpable with the tension of unspoken fears. Ellen felt like she was drowning in the weight of it, the shadows swirling around her like a storm whipping at the edges of her sanity. She clutched Karen's hand tighter, as if the simple connection could anchor them both to a reality that was slipping away. Ellen, Karen said, her voice trembling. What if sharing brings them pain instead of peace? Her words slashed through Ellen's heart, making it thunder even harder. The idea lodged itself deep within her mind. What if those memories they suppressed were twisted and dark, memories they had buried for a reason? But before she could voice her doubt, the shadows began to pulse with life. They surged and receded, drawing Ellen's gaze into a flickering whirl of forms and faces. Remember, they seemed to whisper in a chorus, the voices growing insistent. Remember your grief. Only in your truth can we find ours. Each twisted memory bubbled to the surface like a dark, molten substance. Ellen's grandmother flashed in her mind's eye, an image full of warmth and love. But right behind it lurked the specter of her pain, the guilt of never having fully expressed her feelings. The very thought threatened to suffocate her. Karen's grip slackened as recognition washed over her. I remember my dad, she said softly, her breath hitching with emotion. He didn't think I cared, but I did. I never told him. I never said goodbye properly. As Karen's words poured forth, the shadows erupted in a frenzied dance, their energy pulsing intensely. Ellen felt a sudden shift, the shadows forming another figure, a man with weary eyes that pierced through the chaos. He looked familiar, though Ellen couldn't remember his name. Tell her, the man rasped, his voice a rasping echo that rang in Ellen's ears. Tell her what you never could. An urgency swelled within Ellen. What do you want from us? She shouted into the void, her voice steady now despite the terror clawing at her chest. What do we need to do? Your stories, he replied, anguish bleeding into his tone. Every truth unleashed brings light. Release it. Feel it. She looked to Karen, whose eyes shone with tears. You can do this. We can do this. Heart racing, Ellen took a step forward, pulling Karen along with her. We can lift them up, Karen. Together. Let us share our fears. What if they swallow us instead? Karen whispered, uncertainty cracking her resolve. In that moment, Ellen's mind raced back to a patient named Grace, an elderly woman with a heart full of regrets. As Grace's eyes had clouded, her last words had been filled with longing. I wish I had told my brother I loved him before it was too late. Ellen's throat tightened. What if those words echo in this room, feeding the shadows? With a deep breath, Ellen found her voice a quivering thread in the tempest. Grace, you are loved. You can let that love go. The sweeping shadows halted, seeming to hang on her every word. Encouraged, she continued, we are all filled with sorrows that need release. I miss my grandmother. I never told her. As she spoke, the air electric with the confession, the shadows swirled with a renewed urgency, drawing in the other souls, but just as Ellen felt a shift, a sudden pressure closed around them like a vice. Stop! A voice screamed. You must not go deeper. Karen gasped, her eyes darting to the shadows creeping back. If we keep going, we'll get lost. With a surge of defiance, Ellen shouted back, no. We won't be lost. We'll find them. We'll find our truth. And in that moment, as she poured her honesty into the air, the shadows surged forward, drawing nearer. They surged with an insatiable hunger for the truth, for the warmth of released love, swirling dangerously, the tension coiled tighter, pushing Ellen and Karen to the very brink. Would they stand firm, face their darkest truths, or would the overwhelming force pull them into oblivion? As their hearts beat in sync with the souls around them, a low rumble filled the air, a whisper from the deep stillness. Prepare to confront the silence within. Will your truth save you or mark your end? Fear and determination battled within Ellen, inching toward the mighty chasm of the unknown. Ellen's heart pounded in her chest, the rhythm echoing, the whispers growing louder, rising like a tide ready to overflow. She felt Karen's trembling hands still connected to hers, an anchor in the chaos. But would it be enough? Ellen. Karen's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can do this. What if we let them down? What if we both get lost? We won't get lost, Ellen replied, a boldness surprising even herself. We'll be their voices. We can't turn back now. The shadows shifted again, a swirling mass of past pains and missed opportunities, surrounding them. From the edges, faces emerged, ghostly and sorrowful. Each featured etched with longing, tucked away fears begging to be freed. They swayed, pulling Ellen and Karen closer to their depths. Share. The man's voice, now sharper, pierced the air. Speak your truth, and watch the darkness recede. Ellen swallowed hard, her throat dry. Images flooded her mind every moment she hesitated to express her love, every comforting word left unspoken. Gripping Karen's hand harder, she yelled, my grandmother. I wish I had said it more. I loved her. All those times, I should have told her. Instantly, the shadows quivered, pulling back as if a bright light sliced through their dark form. Ellen felt a shift, the air seemed lighter. A part of her wanted to breathe relief, but the darkness retaliated, swirling in angry eddies, furious at their defiance. More. The man insisted. Don't just remember, feel it. Karen's eyes darted around as if searching for clarity. I remember. She gasped. My dad. I should have fought harder to show him. I rejected him when I should have embraced him. I should have said, Dad, I love you. Ellen turned towards her, seeing Karen's tears slide down her cheeks. The sound of Karen's confession echoed, mixing with the specters surrounding them. Each word reverberated through the chamber, as if the shadows themselves were absorbing the warmth of their honesty. Yes. Ellen urged, her voice breaking. The love needs to flow, Karen. Share your truth. We'll release them. But just as the shadows softened, a sharp intake of breath echoed through the void. A spectral figure materialized, a woman with hollow eyes shimmering with both sadness and rage. She pointed fiercely at the two. You tamper with the unknown. It is not yours to unveil. A jolt shot through Ellen. No. We can do this. She shouted, her voice fueled by desperation and courage. All these years, we've buried so much pain. Someone has to face it. It can't be just buried. Silence. The woman's voice roared, trembling through their bones. You tread on dangerous ground. Another figure stepped in, this time a boy, flickering like a candle in the wind. He looked familiar, his eyes wide, pleading. My sister never knew. Tell her I forgive her. Tell her I'm still here. Ellen froze. Here. She shouted, her voice resonating through the chaos. You're here. You're not forgotten. Your love remains. But the tension shifted again. The darkness surged like a wave, threatening to engulf them once more. The remnants of souls rose, a tempest fueled by anger, loss, and desperation. Ellen. Karen gasped, eyes wide with fear as the shadows clawed toward them. What if it's too much? What if we're not strong enough? Ellen glanced at the swirling figures, their anguished faces illuminating the shadows momentarily. We have to stand firm. For them. For ourselves. As she spoke, she felt the ground beneath her feet pulsing with energy, the air thick with urgency. The entities roared with lost unexpressed emotions, swirling wildly around them. In that split second, before the tide of emotion could pull them under, she leaned closer to Karen. It's now or never. Let us break free. Let us cast our chains off and rise together. But just then, a deafening silence fell, a calm before the storm. The shadows halted, their movement stilled as if waiting, watching, ready to pounce at a moment's hesitation. What will you choose? The man demanded, his eyes boring into Ellen's soul. And at that moment, Ellen realized the fight ahead wasn't just for these lost souls, it was for her own freedom too. Would they plunge deeper into their shared darkness, or would their truths be powerful enough to unshackle them? The question loomed heavy as they stood on the edge of an abyss, trembling in anticipation for the answer. Ellen breathed in deeply, the weight of their decision pressing down like a lead blanket. A flicker of doubt trickled into her mind, icy fingers wrapping around her resolve. She looked over at Karen, whose face was pale, yet illuminated by a spark of bravery that Ellen had never seen before. We will rise together, she reassured her, feeling their connection supercharge her determination. Speak. The man demanded again, urgency etched in his features. Your truths are the key. Without them, the darkness will reclaim its grasp. The shadows watched, their forms rippling, a mass of sorrow waiting to be unleashed. Ellen clenched Karen's hand tighter. This was it. This was where everything changed. Okay. Ellen stammered, her voice trembling. I'm not just going to stand here anymore. The words poured out of her. All those years I was afraid. Afraid to show myself. Afraid to love fully because I feared losing it. I should have opened up, shared my fears, my hopes. I should have said, why was I so silent? The shadows thrashed, a tempest of grief swirling wildly around them, angry faces morphing from peaceful looks to agonized expressions. But something shifted. It felt feeble, yet that tiniest crack in their dark facade gave Ellen hope. Keep going. Karen urged, her voice growing stronger. You've got this. Ellen met her gaze, the flicker of strength passing between them. Alone, I felt powerless. But I have you now. She inhaled a shaky breath, stepping closer to the gathering shadows. And I want to say to all of you, you are not alone. Your stories matter. We can't be shushed into silence any longer. Every unspoken truth must be let out. A chorus of cries erupted from the depths, as if her words struck a powerful chord within the lost souls. The spectral woman with hollow eyes lurched forward, rage palpable, her voice slicing through the thick air. You dare defy what lies buried? Ellen stumbled back, but Karen stood firm, her unwavering gaze locked onto the woman. We dare. She shouted, every ounce of intense emotion igniting behind her words. We will unearth the buried. We will say the words that remain unsaid. The intensity of the shadows shifted, dark tendrils swirling violently, fighting desperately against this newfound force. Ellen lingered on the brink of fear and exhilaration. Could they really do this? Together, they were powerful. A flash of conviction ignited in her heart. They had to keep going. Speak, Karen. Share your truth. Ellen urged, with trembling hands. Karen closed her eyes. I never acknowledged my fears. I was so scared of being rejected again after I lost him. I should have said, Dad, I miss you. Her voice broke, crackling with grief, resonating loudly through the spectral chaos. I wish he could hear me. I wish he knew how much I loved him. The shadows recoiled, slinking back momentarily, as rays of light flickered into existence. Each word seemed to cleave the darkness, creating a pathway drenched in glimmering hope. Ellen could feel a stir of energy as love poured forth. A connection was forming in this chaotic storm, a raw bond, binding them to these lost souls. Keep pushing. Together. Ellen shouted, adrenaline surging through her. But the woman with the hollow eyes screamed, a blood-curdling sound that sent shivers down Ellen's spine. You will pay for your insolence. This is not over. I refuse to be silenced. Karen yelled back, her eyes fierce with unfashionable naivete. You can't hold us hostage anymore. The air crackled as they began to glow, illuminating their surroundings as the shadows swirled more violently. Ellen could see at a glimpse of freedom, shimmers of souls released, love spilling over where chains of regret had held them captive. But suddenly, the shadows surged again, more aggressive than before, clawing at the light as if drawn by a magnet. Ellen. Karen's voice trembled with fear as the dark waves surged toward them, threatening to swallow their hard-won progress. What if we break apart? Ellen's heart raced. We won't break. Not now. We stand together stronger than ever. She could feel the ground quaking beneath them, a final confrontation looming large and inevitable. But what if we let go? As they stood, bravely defying the darkness, chaos erupted around them, the question hanging in the air like a thunderous storm. Would they hold their ground, or would the weight of oblivion reclaim them in the dark? The climax was racing toward them like a freight train, and all they could do was grip each other tight and hope their voices would drown out the silence. What awaited them next? Ellen and Karen stood resolute, ground zero for the swirling tempest of shadows and sorrow that encircled them. The air grew thick with tumult, wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud, intertwined with their fears, mounting like a tidal wave. We can handle this. Ellen shouted, willing her voice to cut through the noise, heartbeat racing with conviction. No more running. Karen echoed, her voice ferocious yet trembling as she stared defiantly into the abyss. We've spent too long silenced by guilt and regret. We are ready to scream our truths. The howling cries of the spirits danced around them, battling for dominance, but Ellen felt a flicker of warmth rising from within her as they lost themselves in the grip of change. We will share. We will give you names and memories. Together. Ellen shouted, her voice resonating like a lighthouse beacon through the storm. Your pain deserves to be known. The shadows momentarily recoiled, flickering, hesitating. For every ounce of courage that Ellen summoned, it felt like an archway between life and oblivion. The palpable tension shifted, and Ellen could see fractured reflections in the air, memories swirling like mist. One shadow, piercing through the chaos, took form. It was Margaret, her otherworldly visage strong against the storm. The ties of memories bind us. She cried, her eyes pleading. You, the living, can cut through our shackles. But it begins with your release. Ellen felt it then, an undeniable pact forming. Each tragic truth they shared would peel away layers of darkness that had amassed over the years like barnacles on a ship's hull. In that spirit, she called out, I remember evenings with my mom. When the lights went dim, we shared our fears, cooking late-night snacks and whispering dreams. I want you to know every moment filled with laughter, let that drown the sorrow. The shadows shimmered, as if acknowledging the spark of light arising. More. Margaret urged. Together. Karen cried. Her words burst forth like cracks in a dam. I never told him how much I admired him. How his laughter could brighten the darkest of my days. A cacophony of commendation built around them, shadows condensing, pulsing in response to each confession. Ellen and Karen didn't waver. It felt like an unchaining, as they began to witness the tendrils of darkness dulled, releasing their grip. Don't fear it, Karen. Ellen urged. Their pain is not ours to carry anymore. We have to let it out. The shadows pulsated, and Karen inhaled deeply. I cursed his absence, kept my heart locked away. I must say it. I never saw his last breath. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so scared of losing you. With those words, the wall of shadows rippled, shivering in response. Freedom, Margaret whispered, her form softening, melding with the brighter hues swirling around her. Don't stop. Our voices matter. Ellen rallied again, her conviction spurring her on. I adore my friend who stood by me even when the storms raged. You are valued. As they spoke, the storm began to lift, shadows unfurling as though set loose from invisible chains. The tension paled, and the room shimmered with a soft, gold light. A single tear rolled down Karen's cheek, pure, liberating, finally letting go of the heaviness she had carried for too long. You will always be remembered. Love holds you. She shouted, heart soaring. The shadows shuddered, bending further away from the warmth, with shared power. The final pieces of spirits that once wove through their lives began to emerge, bridging the gap between the living and the lost. A fearsome wind whipped around them, but it had taken on a gentler note, reverberating with compassion. All at once, Ellen felt her heart alight as joy seeped through their souls. We are here. She echoed through the depths, to remember the love, to allow each name to be spoken. Let that love shine through even the darkest memories. The whispers rose in joyful harmony around them, swirling more erratically than before but filled now with resonant freedom. The ethereal figures spun, wrapping around like a cocoon of fragile warmth the fears. Receding like shadows at dawn. Release your hold upon us. Margaret's voice rang clear, harmonizing with the chorus of souls. Find peace within your own truths. The world vibrated with their strength, a thunderous explosion of authenticity that shattered the silence that had so long lingered. Ellen reached for Karen's hand tighter, united in purpose, ready, willing to confront anything, even the shadows of their own pasts. The shadows thinned in a final peak of tension, folding away, revealing a swirling light. Ghosts of broken whispers fell silent, leaving an echo of joy draped across the room. As the last wisps of darkness subsided, Ellen and Karen grasped onto the remaining light that replaced what was once a haunting claustrophobia. However, just before the final whispers disappeared, Ellen heard the echo of one last message, reverberating softly. Thank you. A soft breeze washed over them, lifting their spirits high, and within that final release, they understood the immense power that came from acceptance, love, and truth, realizations that came not just for the spirits that lingered in sorrow, but for themselves as well. Finally stepping back, both women gasped, glowing in that warmth of acceptance. The specters danced lightly into the air, lingering for a heartbeat before fading gently into the dawn. A promise of peace realized, where once had stood the abyss of despair, flourished in expansive calm. The uncertainty melted away, leaving behind only echoes of understanding. They had shared their stories, had lifted the weight of unspoken words, and in doing so, they had found their own voices too. The silence after was profound, as if the world had tilted toward a deeper truth. Ellen and Karen exchanged glances swollen with emotion, a bond forged in the fires of fear and defiance. Let us go home, Karen whispered, her own heart brimming with soulless whisperings. They stepped forward together, leaving behind the darkness, armed with the knowledge that to face one's truth was to invite light in even in the most harrowing shadows. The cool air brushed against their skin as they left room 7 behind, closing the door slowly. A golden glimmer caught Karen's eye, and as she turned back, the room shimmered briefly, a grateful farewell from those finally freed. Ellen held her breath steady. She knew their journey didn't end here. They would carry these lessons back into the world, shining bright, igniting the courage in others to share their truths. For there would always be whispers waiting to be released, stories yearning for brave souls to tell them, and as they moved forward, both women knew one thing: nothing could ever dim the brilliance of the human spirit, even amidst lingering shadows. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful finale.